Hey everyone, it's Katie and Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hi everybody.
This is Driving Home the Movie, and we went to a little indie film. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I don't know, like, our theater was actually pretty packed. I'm a little surprised for such a, up and coming director and up and coming cast. We went to see The Last Jedi.
Woo.
We went to see a Star Wars, everyone.
Just making sure there's enough space on the camera, right?
There are 24 minutes. Do you want me to start over? Guess who added more storage space to our camera? So Star Wars happened. We saw Star Wars, everyone.
Yay, Star Wars!
Yay, Star Wars! This was intense. There was one... Alright, so there's one part where kind of towards the end of the first act, where something happened, as I went, wait, what just happened? What just happened? I whispered over, and you were like, I think so? And then something completely different happened, and it ended up not being it. But there are parts of this movie where you're seriously... one thing I will say about this...
They throw your expectations at the wall and break you apart and tear you down.
So, there are definitely parts of this movie that, like The Force Awakens, is very cyclical in terms of... there are things that are not necessarily even not word for word, but basically beat for beat, pulling from other parts of Star Wars. Obviously, if you've seen the trailer, you know that a lot of it is about Rey going to Luke and having Luke teach her the ways of the Force. So there are things that seem very similar to Yoda and to Luke's,
bad.
yeah. Well, but specifically to Luke and to Yoda's stuff in what's the second one?
Empire.
I know it's Empire. I can't think of the other words.
Strikes Back.
The Strikes Back. I knew that. Okay. And then there's also in terms of the relationship. Again, this is in the trailer, so it's not really spoilers. The relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren, and the potential for one to turn the other, and them both feeling torn, which again, very similar to Vader and Luke. These themes are still there. They're absolutely still there. And then, essentially, a lot of what we know about Star Wars, a lot of the stuff that we grew up with, these themes and Star Wars are still there. But on top of that, I felt, and Mike was just saying something of the same vein, that this movie does a very good job of setting up your expectations and then veering completely different, but still in a way that is set up in the film. And I think it does a good job of deconstructing a lot of those tropes and not doing the exact same thing of the previous movies. And in that, I think it's a very big success. And I think the biggest success is the way it sets up, it strengthens stuff in Force Awakens, and it also sets up specific things that are clearly going to happen in the third film. And I think that's its biggest success. That's its biggest achievement as a film, is the way, there's the second movie slump is definitely a thing that happens in a lot of films, in a lot of film franchises. And this does a very good job of being this strong pillar in the middle of, there are a lot of things that were set up in Force Awakens, and I feel like this movie does a very good job of solidifying those themes and then taking it a step further. Again, I'm very excited for the third movie. I think that there was some really satisfying moments in this one, but they left open so many things And they also, I think, there were things I was worried were going to come to a head in the third movie that actually kind of got rounded out in this movie, which makes me wonder what's going to happen in the third movie. And that's exciting. Like, that part really excites me as a fan and as someone who's really loving these new characters that they've set up, who have a much more focus and more of arcs, which I really like.
Each character has a struggle and a fight that they're fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, I have some quibbles about it. I have specifically, there are a couple of smaller characters who don't make it through this film, which I get are stakes, but they were also characters I wanted to know more about, and I was kind of bummed out that certain ones, like, I don't think this is that much of a spoiler because I'm being very vague. Also, I feel like most of the people who watch these videos watch these anyway after because they want to see what we have to say for spoilers. But, and Mike and I, before we started, said, like, we estimated 30 seconds for the non-spoiler stuff. So we're going a little longer than that. But, so what I will say about this movie, before we get into the big spoilers, is that, it feels like they do a really good job of setting up the stakes, like I said, for the final film. They do a really good job of copping to the problems of the franchise as it's been. Things that people have complained about for a very long time, and frankly, things that people have complained specifically about the prequels about. And it does a very good job of basically not letting the prequels off the hook and saying and framing it as people going, yeah. Like, they mentioned it in the trailer, like, yeah, the Jedi kind of sucked. Like, the ideas of the Jedi are not bad, but the Jedi as an organization kind of did some shitty things. And they definitely saw that in the prequels. Like, the whole point is, like, whether or not Vader does well is, or like whether or not Vader, like, became good at some point, was that he was basically turned because of, the Jedi being assholes, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, it was the failures, which is a theme in the movie, of the Jedi, of Ben Kenobi, of everyone who trained. Yoda definitely.
Like, the entire Jedi Council in the prequels did some really stupid things. Yeah?
Yes.
Arguably also just taking children from their homes, not a good idea. Like, taking them from their homes and then telling them that they can't love people, not a good idea. And this movie, actually, there's a part that really strengthens the idea that that's kind of bullshit. So that's great. Besides that, yeah, all the characters that you liked from The Force Awakens get scenes that are really good. You can make arguments that some of them, like, you know, whether certain arcs are the strongest they could be, I feel like that's a valid argument. The way there's some stuff in the third act, a particular thing that I'm very nervous about, that we will get into. And, you know, there is also, I'm interested to see how people feel about how Leia is done, considering that they were already done filming by the time she passed, so there's only so much, you know. I think that it's totally fair to say that this was a unintentional but still really solid, you know, goodbye to both Leia and to Carrie and her legacy, but it wasn't one that was intentional when they wrote the movie. So it means that I'm wondering what they're going to do for the third film. And I honestly wish that she hadn't passed away last year, because, like, it's heartbreaking. But I'm also wishing she didn't pass away because I'm dying to see what they would have done with that third movie, you know?
Didn't she pass away this year?
No, it was right before New Year's.
Was it right before New Year's?
Or it was like right at the cusp of New Year. So maybe it was 2017, but it was like the earliest in 2017 it could be. I'm pretty sure it was right after Christmas, like a couple days after. So I don't know. All right, so I'll just say, just go to see it. If you want to wait for spoilers until after you see it, go to see it. I know you're going to.
Just see the dang movie.
Just see the dang movie. You ready to talk spoilers?
Yeah, let's talk spoilers.
All right. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit because it's getting very warm in here because our car likes to just heat up the car. And then it's like the middle of winter and we are sweating bullets. All right, you ready?
Oh, I thought you were going to not do the doobie-doo because you just were talking about heat for nonsense for some time. That was enough spoiler warning, wasn't it?
No, that was just me saying it because I was doing that action. Spoilers. I don't even know where to start. So, one of the things I said, I guess, let's start with the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff. God, there's so much to talk about. This is actually a movie with a lot of plot points, which I will say is arguably the parts that... There are some parts of this movie that go a little long. There's some set pieces that go a little long, and I didn't realize... They get to a planet where they're trying to hide at, like, where the last of, like, the rebellion, because the rebellion has been, like, picked off quite a bit before this movie and also during it. And there's this part where they finally get to the planet, and to this planet that used to be their old rebel base, and I was sure that the movie was about to end. Like, in my brain, I was like, because certain things happened. And I was like, oh, they're still going. Oh, now I remember these parts from the trailer with this planet with salt and red soil, which is very cool, by the way. That visual is great. But anyway, but yeah, it keeps going, and I feel like the pacing of this film is a little wonky only because it's chock full of stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's got like 12 running plots, it feels like it. And over the course of the entire movie, like 6 of them get resolved, but it feels like it's handling 12 plots and balancing, and like maybe something starts up in Act 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know? like there's like elements of a heist movie in this thing, and elements of like
other stuff, yeah. And yeah, and there are parts of it where, in terms of like strategy, like the strategy of the rebels gets a little wonky, and maybe in further viewings I will have a better sense of where their military strategy was, or like what exactly they were doing. But a lot of that exposition gets put through really, like, it does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, yeah, I wish that it was a little tighter that way, but that could just be a first viewing thing, and obviously I'm going to watch this a billion more times, so I'll probably be okay by the end. It's fine. But anyway, so throughout this film, when Rey is with Luke, even before I think even before maybe he agrees to train her, she is seeing Kylo Ren, like they've been connected, and they don't know why, and neither of them are doing it on purpose. And she's pissed because he killed Han Solo in the last movie, and she still is really pissed off about that.
They didn't really finish their duel there.
Yeah, no, they didn't. And he's just kind of frustrated with everything and kind of quietness. And actually, before this, and it was something that I was hoping would happen, he gets pulled towards the good again when he has to go up against his mother, where he's going to shoot at his mother, and he doesn't take the shot. Arguably, actually, similarly to Finn, which I think is kind of a nice little parallel. So he's already had this kind of internal pull back to the light. And she is also feeling like angry and frustrated, and they're both kind of developing a friendship, which I find really interesting. And so she's, during these like moments when they're both connected to each other, she she does try to bring him more to the light as they keep talking. And I know people were worried that it was like, oh, Rey is going to be the one to try to pull him to the light. And what I didn't want to happen is for her to go out of her way to do it. Like that she would decide that this was what she had to do. What I liked about this was that it put them in a situation where they both had to interact with each other. It was only after talking to each other and developing kind of an uneasy friendship that she decides that he can do right, that he can come back. And then I really like the fact that his near redemption, because it was very close, and like them actually like working together, I like the fact again that it was sparked not by like her going out of her way to help him, and it took like them actually interacting with each other. And then the fact that he does turn against his, like, this is actually probably the biggest shocker, because we're so used to like, first of all, we're used to, if anything, this happening in the third movie, and it happens in the second, which I think like confused everyone. But essentially Kylo Ren kills Snoke, who was a weaker, lesser emperor anyway. Like, no one cared about Snoke. Zero people in the world cared about Grand Master Snoke, or whatever the hell his name was. So him basically pantomiming the same thing the Emperor did,
works well for him just getting killed.
No one cares. No offense to Andy Serkis, because he tried his best, but no one gives a shit about Snoke. No one. So Kylo, and this is like at the end of the second act, I guess. Technically, I don't know, like, it's so hard to place like specific acts, but it was close to like the end of the second.
Moving into the fourth.
But he kills him, and then Rey and him have to fight the Snoke's little red army, like his like hand soldiers, back to back, which was a really cool scene. That was a really cool fight. And she's like, and then she's immediately like, okay, we gotta go help the rebels. We gotta do that. And his whole thing is like, no, this all sucks. We need to begin anew. Like, he basically, throughout the first movie, and I was really adamant about why I liked the first movie for this, is that he was such a fanboy in the way that, like, we see in the real world of these new fascists who are pantomiming the like things that happened in the they're pulling into this nostalgia for this old evil. And absolutely Kylo Ren was digging deep into that. He wanted to be the new Vader. And the camera just hit our window because Mike went over a bump. But he wanted to be the new Vader. And in this movie, it's interesting because his arc is Rey helps him realize that the old empire was also bullshit, and he wants to create something new. And he says, like, join me. We don't need any of this. And and you think for a second, we'll get to Rey's like whole arc too, because it obviously ties into this. And you think for a second that she might do it, because she's been through some shit, and she's had to deal with the fact that that Luke absolutely that her finding out stuff about Luke and kind of shaking her belief in him and in the Jedi. So you think she might take him up on it, and then she doesn't, and she runs away. Probably the most awkward, like, yeah, I guess that happened, was how she found her way back to the Millennium Falcon, but okay. It's fine. It's fine. Chewie found her. It was fine.
She's a Jedi, and Jedis can, swim in space.
Oh yeah, that happens. We haven't even talked about that. So
talk about the first scene of taking your expectations and then just blowing it out of the water.
Okay. Anyway, so I'll finish up the Kylo Ren thing. So I like the fact that now Kylo Ren is in charge of this giant army, and also the fact that Hux is number 2, and they hate each other, and that's going to be amazing in the third movie. I am excited about that. But the fact that, like, now he is, like... I like the fact that they were setting up the redemption, and then it didn't happen. But it felt very satisfying for him to reject it again. I was really worried. I was genuinely very worried about them giving him an easy redemption after him killing Han Solo, and instead they didn't, and that is really good. And I honestly think that Adam Driver did a very good job in this scene, and I think him setting him up as this kind of villain is very interesting. I am interested to see how they do it in the third movie. So let's talk about Leia. First of all, again, I am heartbroken that we don't have Carrie Fisher anymore. And I will tell you that I did not cry in the actual movie. When I did cry was in the ending credits when they said in memorial to our princess, Carrie Fisher. And then the tears came. But I made it through the whole movie. I feel good about that. So during not the first big battle, because that was like the first thing that happened in the movie. To their credit, they start fast. But there's this whole thing. There's some really interesting, good stuff with Poe and Leia that made me very happy, because in my head, like, Poe sees Leia as a total mom. Like, we know a little bit about his mom from the other books and from the comics. And she and Leia were friends, so, like, that's, like, his surrogate mom. And there's this whole thing with him. I really like the fact that, like, that she calls him out for being reckless and for not being a good leader, and she clearly wants him to be the next leader of the rebellion. Like, that's kind of implied. Like, you need to learn this. You need to learn that you can't, like, rush into danger. You have to know strategy and know how to, like, help people, like, not die. You want to try to avoid that. But there's a part where they're apparently being tracked, and they didn't realize that they were being tracked, but they were. And so the First Order ambushes them, and this is when Kylo Ren thinks about shooting his mother, and then in his TIE fighter, and then doesn't. Then someone else, one of the other First Order, shoots, like, the main bridge. And you see explosions behind Leia. And that's when I went... But she was like... I was thinking in my brain, like, well, she was clearly in another room, but, like, the explosions are behind her. But then, like, you don't see her. And I looked at Mike and I was like, did Princess Leia just explode? Did they just kill off Princess Leia? And he was like, I think... What? You're like...
I said... Maybe?
You were convinced, right?
I was pretty convinced that...
I was very worried. And then...
But they didn't give, like, any sort of fanfare or any sort of thing.
That's why I was like, holy shit. Like, not that she couldn't have died in this movie, because I was totally prepared for that to have happened anyway, even if she hadn't... Even if the actress hadn't died.
And all the advertising is leading into that.
Yeah,
because everyone knows Carrie Fisher has died.
Yeah. So... But I was like, how is there not any more fanfare? Like, it happened so early. This is, I honestly might not be okay with this as a fan of the series. Like, I might not be okay with what they're setting up for her to just die like this. And then, so you see her floating in space. And I'm thinking again, I know how space works. But it turns out that essentially, you know how for years, like actual decades, really since Return of the Jedi, there have been fans, especially female fans, who have been waiting and waiting and waiting for Leia to use the Force in like a big way, in a really big way. She uses the Force to survive, you guys. Like, she uses the Force to basically push herself through space. Push herself through space and make it to the hatch. I cheered. I clapped so dang hard when this happened. This is something that people have been wanting to see. She doesn't have to become necessarily a Jedi, even though I know a lot of fans wanted that. But it was amazing to me that we actually got to see her use the Force in like this massive way to save herself. Now, she's not in the movie for a decent amount of the second act then. Because she's under, like...
Coma.
In a coma.
Space coma.
Which just goes to show, then the entire leadership gets screwed up after that. Because, people are so reliant on Leia being Leia. I should also point out, rest in peace, General Akbar.
Admiral Akbar.
Admiral Akbar. It's been a long day.
He might have been general already.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But Akbar dies. Now, granted, his voice actor did pass away fairly recently, so I'm assuming that's why they did it. But yeah, he actually did die in the explosion. That was the casualty we definitely know about. So enter Laura Dern, who plays what was it? Holdo, but it's like Admiral, like Senior Admiral or something. I'm looking it up again. I think that there's the plot gets a little muddied, I think, with...
the rebels around this time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of why are they choosing to do this? And I think it plays out okay.
Because they put you on this in Poe's shoes, and they want you to buy into Poe's plot and Poe's plan. This is gonna work. This is gonna be the thing because this is a movie.
And I will say I appreciate them going this actually didn't work. And that doesn't mean that the heroes that we're working on that also is Vice Admiral Holdo. That doesn't mean that the people that were doing that plan are any less heroic. It just didn't work. And I will say there's also there are a lot of things in this where the best laid plans of our heroes completely go wrong. They do not end up what
plan goes right? There's no Poe plans that go right.
Yeah, exactly. And he has to learn the fact that his shoot 'em up attitude does not always work.
Yeah, he puts his whole team out in a bunch of junker speeders, and he loses a bunch of pilots.
I mean, to be fair, they do. Yeah, they do. I mean, it's probably the best that they could have done with what they were doing. But even before, them going, see, that's the thing. All the plots interact. So now I'm wanting to go to other characters. But when Rose and Finn go to the casino to try to find the particular codemaster or whatever, and then it turns out they never actually get to talk to him, and they have to deal with another guy.
Guy that sold them out.
The guy that ends up selling them out eventually. Played though to perfection. By Benicio del Toro. His name is just DJ, by the way. I don't think they actually say it. But the funny thing is that there's this. They hear from Maz, who we get to see, and she basically gets a cameo, which I'm kind of I hope that we get to see more of her. But there's a whole bit where you see a hollow
fight
communication with her, but she's clearly in the middle of a firefight, and they're like, "What are you doing out there?" And she goes, "Union dispute. It's a long story. Just don't worry about it." It's pretty entertaining.
But what I said about Mr. DJ here, he is everything Han Solo always wanted to be but never could be because Han Solo has a heart.
Yeah, I think you're very much right. So I'm trying to think what else.
He's just a dirty, shady smuggler who's doing it for the money and wants money.
Yeah.
And will sell anything and anyone out for the money.
I'm honestly wondering if we're going to get to see him again, and maybe I could see him having more of a redemption than anybody else of the bad guys.
I don't think we're going to get him a redemption. I think he's a one-off character just to show the vastness of the...
It's going to be really funny in like 2 years when you're like, dang it, I was wrong.
Just let him be. He can show up again.
Yeah.
Selling death sticks.
Anyway, so I will say this much, and maybe like one of my bigger problems is that it's not that Poe and Holdo having a disagreement is the problem. It's the fact that like some of this could have been fixed. Like Poe tries to basically have a mutiny in the middle of this. All she had to do was explain her strategy. And she doesn't to Poe. And then, like, Poe nearly takes over. And then Leia basically has to wake up and be like, and then, like, hit him with a stun gun and like, have him escorted off the ship. And it's like, all you had to do was just explain your tactic. I feel like that was maybe the part that I wish hadn't gone that way, just because it was kind of silly. Just saying. What I will... So, we haven't really... I want to get to everything else. I will say that I really love Rose. Rose is my new favorite. I knew she was going to be. As soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, no, that is the character that I love. She's very sweet and earnest. She's
full of hope. She's
full of hope and optimism. She has kind of the message towards the end of the movie where she and Finn have become like close friends throughout the movie, and Finn does a full-on Poe and is about to like sacrifice himself. He's basically doing the thing in Independence Day where what's his face puts his ship right in the middle of the enemy weapon and it blows up. He's going to do that.
Sacrifice his life to buy some time.
And instead, well, not even to buy time, but to stop the... Specifically It's
specifically to buy time because it's going to maybe break the gun. Okay. And maybe then they can't open the door, so maybe then the rebels can hold out a little longer.
Yeah, so Rose slams into him with her ship.
And that's also been the thing that's been happening the entire movie.
Is where, like, people...
For the rebels, like, where it's like, we've held out as long as we can, I gotta do something, so I'm just gonna sacrifice myself in some way to do something, and then blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing Laura Dern's character does.
Yeah. Even though hers was amazing.
Hers was a good one.
The sound design in that part was so damn good because it's completely quiet because the ship is just being torn apart.
Oh, also, I'm gonna give a plug. Go see this movie in an Atmos theater.
Yeah, it's really good. It shakes. It's really good. But my point is that like it goes completely quiet as like these ships are being ripped apart because of her sacrificing herself. And during the silence, you heard a guy in the theater go, "Holy shit." It's just, she has arguably, here's the thing, her whole thing has been, you know, strategy and, you know, more conservative choices in terms of action. And she does do the kind of hotshot, like, thing. Which I think goes to show that, like, it's for very, very specific situations. It's not an everyday thing. And so, but she gets to have arguably the most badass moment of the whole movie. But at the same time, then you have Poe recognizing what she's doing, and recognizing it not as her fleeing, but as her, you know, making the choice. And he ends up learning and becoming a true leader because he actually he's not rushing into danger anymore. You know, it's all about strategy and trying to keep your numbers, especially when their numbers are so few. So I really liked that element. I liked the fact that he had a full arc because he didn't really have one in The Force Awakens for a good reason. He wasn't supposed to make it alive after the first.
They figured, let's keep this guy. He's fun.
Yeah. No, that was literally what happened. J.J. Abrams was like, I really like this actor. I don't want him to go away. So, anyway, so I loved Rose a lot. And I love the fact that when Finn is about to sacrifice himself, she pushes him. She basically uses her ship to push him out of the way of it. And she's very hurt at the end, but she says something along the lines of like, that's what's going to win this thing is not attacking
our enemy,
the people we hate with everything we've got. It's about protecting the people we love. And I will say, and I know it's probably the most controversial part, and I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that I don't like the fact that she gives him a kiss at the end. I feel like in terms of her thinking that she could die, and it was okay, I think it would have been just as impactful if she had just given that speech. And it would have made it more ambiguous, considering I didn't see them. I saw them getting a friendship. I saw them connecting as people, but I didn't see necessarily romantic love forming between the two of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can see it in Empire. Between Han and Leia.
Well, but that's a totally different thing because Han and Leia knew each other. They already had set up for that. I thought it was okay. I wish that even if it was just a kiss on the cheek instead, I feel like that would have been a better way to go about it. Frankly, I'm also really worried not whether or not that was a smart choice. I'm really worried about how the fandom is going to treat Rose and specifically treat the actress. Around
maybe not making the Finn Poe thing happen?
Yeah, there are ways that this could be a problem, and I'm really worried that because I know how fandom acts, I'm really worried because Kelly Marie Tran, who plays her, she's so sweet, and I'm just very nervous about that. So if you're watching and you're getting mad because there's the potential for Poe and Finn to not get together, I am simply asking you to not be awful
Jerks.
to a real person who also did not write things. She didn't write the movie. So maybe don't be an asshole to her. Thanks. Please, thank you.
Also, maybe, when you're dying and there's someone in front of you and you think you're dying and you're like,
yeah.
You know what, just go for it.
Yeah. It wasn't my favorite part, I will say. Maybe it's one of the parts that I would not have done. I did, however, love their little mission into the casino. I like the fact that they bring up how there are really some interesting things that they bring up. One, the fact that
war profiteering.
The war profiteering I thought was really smart. I like the fact that Finn is sees this place is so cool, and he's never been outside of the
He's been an Empire drone his entire life.
Yeah, First Order drone. So, he doesn't really know. So, her explaining it's and then he suddenly understands. And then he's, with her, and he goes, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I really liked how they both escape. That whole scene was really fun. I really liked BB-8 taking down some guards. And also the bit where one of the patrons thinks he's a slot machine and keeps trying to put money in, and then he ends up using that money later on to attack the guards with. BB-8 gets to be an action star in this movie, and it's pretty great. I'm very happy about this. So besides that, I really liked Rose's whole thing. I like the fact that later on, when Rose gives the code guy her necklace because he wants payment, Finn is immediately pissed off on her behalf and is trying to get him to give it back to her. I like the fact that they become a team very quickly. And yeah, there's just some really interesting stuff with them that I really like. I really like the two of them teaming up together. And if they end up becoming a true romantic thing in the third movie, I wouldn't necessarily mind it. I hope that it's done well. I'm assuming she's going to wake up and she's going to be like, yeah, so I know I kissed you and look, I thought I was about to die and that doesn't mean anything. I don't want you to think it was, I'm assuming they're going to have a very awkward conversation regardless. And I don't know. I don't know how it's going to happen. I am still anticipating them not having Poe and Finn get together in canon, and I hope that people aren't assholes about that. Don't be assholes to the actors. If you want to give shit to the producers who are clear and like Disney and shit, then I am fine with that. Just be gentle to the actors because they get the scripts and they don't have a whole lot of control over this stuff.
Except for when you're Leia.
Well, Leia did say that there needed to be more space jewelry. So, seriously, Carrie Fisher was like, there needs to be more space jewelry, and she got more space jewelry, like for the entire cast. It's really great. So, we haven't gotten to Rey. Or really to Luke. Mark Hamill did a really good job with this role. Arguably,
God damn, he blew it out of the water.
I'm just gonna say it. Best performance in the movie, hands down. He really nailed it. Like we mentioned it before, that one of the things this movie does really well is have Luke be like, yeah, the Jedi were bullshit. The Jedi were assholes, and they were hypocrites, and they basically were like a judgy police, and they were like soldiers in a war, and they basically failed Anakin Skywalker, and that's why he became Darth Vader. There are 1,000 things that the Jedi did wrong, and
I failed Ben. I couldn't even make it work.
Yeah, and I suck. Like, I did really shitty things. I failed just like them, which is why I've literally run away from everything. Like, you understand why he ran away. It wasn't just the fact that Ben turned to the dark side. It's that it was his mistake. This is a really good film for Mark Hamill. My God. And he's also he's curmudgeon-y. He throws his lightsaber right away, which is like a great callback to every time that lightsaber has been dropped somewhere. That was the first thing I thought.
Where does this thing keep showing up from? And he just throws it like, God damn.
He just throws it away. Oh, it's so good. And Rey is like,
I've heard that that originally that wasn't the way it went, and that Luke was the one that made the call and said, like, we got to do it like this. Can't do that.
Really?
Do it like this. Yeah, that's what I've read.
Wow. So she finally convinces him. The best part is, so she's trying to knock on his door, and he won't answer, and she looks around and stuff, and then someone else knocks on the door, and Luke's like, go away, and then Chewie crashes into it and gives him a piece of his mind, which is great. It's so good.
It's good, but here's one of my minor quibbles about the movie. Chewie is so underutilized, and like it's almost to the point where they don't know what to do with him without Han.
I will say this much. We just talked about how there are so many plots. There's only so much space.
I know.
And now that Chewie is back with the team, I think that there'll be more things to do. He does get an adorable pork friend.
Adorable porks.
I think the porks are going to be a very divisive thing. But I like them. And I think the fact that Chewie was the one who got to... There was the really dark part where he clearly murdered and cooked up a pork. And then the porks are just staring at him. And then he can't eat it because the porks are looking very sad at him. I know there's already a picture book about how the porks follow him around, and it's adorable. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'm not kidding. It exists.
I believe you.
The other great thing is when Luke goes to the Millennium Falcon and he's kind of just heartbroken, and then R2-D2 wakes up and he's like, R2! And then R2-D2 starts yelling at him.
Did you notice the way they cut that scene, by the way, when R2-D2 wakes up and Luke is sitting there? It's cut the same exact way where Obi-Wan finds R2.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's so good.
Yeah, and then Luke does that same motion where Obi-Wan's like, and he throws back the hood. It's the same
that's
motion.
so good. I didn't even notice that. What I did notice was when R2-D2 is giving him the riot act, and he's like, I know, listen, you have to understand, I know. And then he's like, hey, sacred island, don't, like, basically, whatever R2-D2 is saying,
That's such a cheap shot.
No, I'm talking about, like, basically, Luke implies that R2-D2 was cussing out the island. Because he said, watch your language, that's a sacred island you're on. But then he says, like, you can't do anything, you can't tell me otherwise. You can't, like, I won't, like, you can't, nothing you will say will make me change my mind. And he turns on the Leia video.
From the first.
And which I kind of had heard about. I
did not hear
that.
About
was
that.
one of the few details I heard about.
I luckily stayed so spoiler-free.
I honestly thought it was going to be one of those things where Leia had actually, like, re-recorded the message, but instead it was literally just her original one. And he says, and Luke looks at R2 and is like,
cheap shot.
That's a cheap shot. And but he does it mostly gently. So he ends up training Rey, but and there is that funny bit where he's like, what do you know of the Force? What is the Force? And she goes like, it's a power the Jedis use to, like, move rocks and stuff. And he's like, everything you just said is wrong.
And the thing is that both lines from the two of them come back.
Yep,
at the end
it absolutely does. There's a lot of cyclical stuff, actually. There is, and then there's another thing too where Poe says something that Holdo. This is going to be very hard for me to remember. But says about the spark that lights the resistance, and basically we can't go in half-assed. We can't go in guns a-blazing when we need to be smart because we are the spark. We need to be there, which I really like that part of it. But no, so everything with Rey and Luke is great. Like, it's so good, and it explore. Did they ever get to the third lesson? I feel like they only got to 2. This is something that was bothering me because I was trying to remember what because he said, I will teach you 3 lessons.
I remember they got to the second, but I don't know. I mean, like, Luke then sees her talking with Ben.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
maybe
jig is up.
Maybe it's one of those things where in the third movie, Luke will come to her as a Force ghost. Oh, yeah, Luke dies in this.
Yeah.
I don't know if we mentioned that yet. If you're watching this, you probably have watched the movie already.
One of the best deaths, by the way. That was amazing.
That was amazing, but it was one of those things where I was like, hi, he tricked him, he's alive. And then I was like, oh, this isn't actually. So really that was just to, like, piss
That was to piss Kylo Ren off a little bit.
I mean, kind of. Also was the only way, like, it makes so much more sense. They trick us because we see his old X-Wing, like, in the water. So that's how he got there, right? And so you think that he just got there by, like, taking the X-Wing out, like, but he does kind of just appear out of nowhere.
And clean shaven.
Like, he looks.
And the haircut.
Yeah, he looks like he got a haircut. And I was like, a lot of things have happened since Rey left. But no, there's that really good scene with him and Leia. I'm so glad they were able to do that. There was that callback to, like, I know what you're gonna say. I changed my hair. Because it was the same thing that Han said to her. And he's like, looks nice. You look good. Were the dice thing? Is that a thing from the originals?
I don't even know.
I don't know what that was from, but I know he pulled it from the Millennium Falcon, but it made it seem like that was a Han thing the whole time. But I will say, speaking of, they do a really good job of, without having Harrison Ford on screen, the presence of Han, like his importance to the series is really still there. Like, his absence is a major force for like motivations and for plots being moved forward.
And we also learn that because Luke has cut himself off from the Force, he learns of Han's death.
Yes, because we wondered, right? We thought maybe he had felt it, but he had cut himself off. So when he sees Chewie and he's confused why Chewie's there, and they're like, "Oh, we came for you," and he's like, "Where's Han?" And then it cuts away, so we don't actually get to see what that was like. I'm really hoping that like either in the comics or in maybe like one of the novels or something, I would love to have someone like actually write that scene. That would be really interesting. But so I'm trying to think where we were at. So I really like the training stuff. I like the fact that he calls out that the Jedi, like, she starts to feel what the Force actually is. He helps her, like, tap into it. And she suddenly realizes that it really does flow through everything. Like, she starts to see it. There's some really interesting visuals where we get to see shots of things happening around the island and things that have happened in the past. And you really get a sense of what the Jedi are supposed to have felt when they do it. And it's around that time when Luke says that, to say that the Jedi own the Force, or the Jedi harness the Force alone, is vanity. And I thought that was so powerful. That was so good. Because again, like, the Jedi are bullshit. Like, the old Jedi ideas are bullshit. A lot of it is. The bureaucratic aspect of it, and the greater than thou aspect. And Luke is really strict about this. Like, I'm teaching you this stuff so that you recognize that you need to not, like, then, so you know why the Jedi have to end. And it turns out he gives kind of a less than full story about how Ben turned. And basically that he turned and he brought a few of his followers with him, who I'm assuming we're going to see in the last movie. Like the Knights of Ren, I'm assuming, are his little gang of...
I was always wondering if they're the red coat guys that they kill in the room.
No, that was someone else. Like, they gave him a specific name.
I know they did, but they don't
promotion.
I know, but they don't.
No, I'm assuming I'm assuming we're going to see the Knights of Ren in the third movie when Kylo comes to full power. But he destroyed everything, and Luke woke up after being thrown back by him, and suddenly he saw everything on fire. And that was the part that we saw of him holding the hand, which, again, it was really nice to tie back to The Force Awakens that way. And then Kylo talks to Rey, and he says something like, "Did he tell you what happened?" She said, "Yeah." And he goes, he didn't tell you the whole story. And the whole story is that he woke up one night and Luke was over him with a lightsaber about to strike him down. And that's when he realized that his master had betrayed him. And that's what really... Apparently he had already been in contact with Snoke or something like that. Like, he'd already had some interaction. I'd be interested to see if they're going to do some flashbacks to that down the line. But that was what did it. And Rey, Luke finds them, sees that she's talking to Kylo, that they have this connection. They actually touch hands. Which makes her see a vision of him actually doing good at some point, like turning,
betraying Snoke. That's what she sees.
Oh, right, that makes sense. So she did see that coming. And he sees
her parents,
so he thinks that he knows that she will turn. But Luke basically destroys their connection breaks off the connection, and Rey gets pissed. Rey gets really pissed and basically demands that he tell her whether what Kylo said was true. And essentially that Luke saying, yeah, it was true. I saw the darkness in him and how it was consuming him already. And for a moment, I had a moment of weakness, and I started my lightsaber. And then I realized what I was doing, but before I could put it away, he saw me. And that mistake has haunted me forever. And it feels like it doesn't let Luke off the hook, but it also doesn't make him like completely a hypocrite. And I think it does a really good job of having a character who we've known for forever, and having him be flawed, and having him make a mistake and own up to it. And then when he finally faces Kylo, saying, "I'm sorry. I did wrong. I wasn't good. Like, I did you wrong. I'm sorry." And then their face down is really good. And then, of course, it turns out that he was just connected to. He wasn't actually there, and he basically tricked him.
Some kind of Force Ghost magic.
Yeah, some kind of Force Ghost magic. It's fine.
Whatever. It works. Yeah. Story good.
And then he ends up, but he's actually back on the island. He has not cut his hair. And this was, honestly, I'm very impressed by this part. So he does die. Whether it's just his spirit lets out, or whether the fight with Kylo really did knock him out. But he does die. But he dies looking at the sunset, I think, right? The sunset?
Yeah.
It's two suns.
And they play the
theme. The theme. And it's set, and then he just disappears. He's probably gonna be a Force ghost. Because he even says, like, if you strike me down, it's not I will become more
If you
powerful.
strike me down in hatred, I
will be with you forever, just like your father.
Damn.
And then he even says, when he slices him, and then Kylo realizes that he was using Force magic, he says, "See you around." And Kylo is pissed. So basically what I'm saying is Mark Hamill has come back as a Force ghost. There's no way, after that setup, that they're not going to have him haunting the shit out of his nephew. It's going to happen. And it's going to be really good. So we haven't talked about the other Force ghosts that comes in. I'm so glad I didn't get this spoiled. I'm so freaking glad I did not get this spoiled for me. This was a complete surprise. I'm so happy. Yoda showed up!
Burning down to the temple.
It's so good.
You were totally waiting for Kenobi, and I was waiting for Kenobi too.
Yeah.
But
Once Yoda happened, so I'm still thinking they're gonna get what's his face, because he is chomping at the bit to play Kenobi again. If they don't give him a full movie, they might as well give him this. Like, they might as well. It would be really fun. But Yoda shows. First of all, so after Rey leaves, Luke just gets pissed, takes like a fire thing, like a fire starter or whatever, and is rushing up to the top of the temple where all the like old texts are, right? And he's going to like set it on fire, and like rain is happening, like it's still a storm, right? And suddenly you see the back, the camera pans, and suddenly you see the back of Yoda. And I'm like, what? What? And then you wonder if Luke's gonna see him. He turns around, and then he's like, Yoda, well, I'm gonna set fire to this. And Yoda just kind of laughs, moves his staff, creates lightning, and sets it on fire for him. And then Luke's first instinct is, I have to rush in. Because that's his first instinct. And it explodes and everything goes. And I think he's like, what are you doing? That was the time. It was like, yeah.
Whatever.
Yoda's like, you weren't wrong. The Jedi, old books. That's all they were. Did you read them? Well, I kind of skimmed them. They weren't that good. Like, nothing that was in there is what we need. Nothing in there is what we need. What we need is Rey. What we need is the future. We need the new. That is why Yoda comes to see Luke. Like, we can survive without the books. We can't survive without her, because she's the start of the new. Like, and also I like the fact that, like, he says, weakness isn't bad. This was another thing I really liked about this movie, where he's like, I'm not going to do the Yoda speak, but weakness is not bad.
And that you learn the most from your failures.
Yeah, like, the best masters learn the most from their failures. Like, what a brilliant way to do this. Like, this is why, even though some of the middle plot was a little middling, and the thing with Poe could have been fixed by just Holdo actually explaining, like, 2 or 3 strategies to him, because it's not like he should have been kept out of it. But the core of this movie that I think it does brilliantly is unfuck up the Jedis, like the concept of the Jedi. It does a really good job of owning the problems with how the Jedi have been written in the past and the general idea of the religion. And they basically go, yeah, even in universe, we're acknowledging the fact that they had some big ass problems. And we're not going to do that anymore. And the fact that the rebellion, not just the rebellion, but the resistance and Rey's path is going to be all about the people that they care about, that they love. That is the core of it. Which is something that was lost in the Jedi for forever, because those were stupid rules. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. I loved this movie a lot. I'm pretty sure when I rewatch it, I will have some problems with it, because we were rewatching The Force Awakens, and there were a couple things that really bothered me just in terms of certain reveals in The Force Awakens. But there's so many parts of this movie that I really like, and like I said, it sets up the third movie so well. And also it was funny. We kind of mentioned it in passing. This movie was funny.
Luke had a bunch of great lines.
Luke had some great lines, and also
Rey's things where she does stuff, and then all of a sudden it damages the house or the stuff of the keepers. Yes, they're these little nuns that take care of the Jedi Temple, and they hate her because she keeps destroying their things. And she even says, I don't think they like me. And Luke's like, I can't imagine why. And this is when she's still trying to convince him to come back. So I will say we have not talked yet about Captain Phasma, who comes back. I'm hoping she hasn't died. I really hope she comes back for the third one. She's gonna come back because her whole thing is her v Finn. Her v Finn.
Yeah, but they already had that big conflict. So
yeah, but it was a pretty good fight, but it wasn't it was very much like the fight that's at the end of Force Awakens.
Yeah, I guess.
They have
opening
conflict. It's just that opening bit, and they needed to separate them.
Yeah. So I will say that
they threw Phasma down a garbage chute in the first movie. And that wasn't a great way to go out. But in this one, they gave her a great way to go out. And they'll probably write a comic book thing where she escapes.
I hope so.
Because that shit didn't blow up. This shit didn't blow up.
My comic pal, Kelly Thompson, wrote and co-made the Phasma comic. Highly recommend. And also, I want to make sure I get the right person. I think it's Delilah Dawson, who is another person I know online. I will double check this information.
But Phasma represents so much of
it definitely was. I want to say though, if you like those things, you should definitely check out both of those books. The Phasma novel, which I'm going to double check was Delilah. I think it was. and the comic. So if you're like, oh, but I barely got to see her in this movie, there are other... Gosh darn it.
Yeah, you misspelled it terribly.
You want to hold it really quick?
Yeah.
You talk for a little bit.
So, anyway, you'd never see me from this angle. Wow.
You see...
I think my angles are always awful. Anyway, no, Phasma is going to come back because her sort of conflict is... She's the conflict for Finn. Like, Finn has this whole thing about, I am my own person, I am not, the thing I was made for, or my upbringing, or my...
Oh no! I've lost control of the camera because you're taking it. All right,
anyway, there's so much about how you were raised and where you come from, and his story of fighting against it to be something bigger.
I'm of the thinking that she might be gone. We'll have to see. I hope she's not, because I think she's really interesting.
If you want to keep that Finn storyline going about that, you'll probably see Phasma again. If you want to make Finn's primary story about the Resistance and sort of Rose, then you're probably gonna make Phasma just pass in that scene. Maybe.
I don't know. I like the idea of her being unkillable. Like, she just keeps getting, trash compactor, falling into a big thing of fire while a ship's exploding. Nothing kills her. It's fine. But, no, by the way, Delilah Dawson actually did write the Phasma novel. I bought it. I still need to read it. But I know I've heard really good things. And she's also a very good writer, so I'd highly recommend. So, but... One thing, it's a kind of minor arc for Finn, but I do like the fact that when the code guy talks to him, the code guy points out, hey, you know the ship that I stole for us to get us there? Yeah, this was an arms dealer. Let's see who he's sold to. Oh, yeah, he's definitely sold to the First Order, but look, he's also sold to the Resistance.
He's selling to everyone.
He's selling parts to everyone. So really, is it bad guys and good guys? You should probably not even take a side, because taking a side sucks. Just do what I do and don't take a side at all and just be out for yourself. That's his whole thing. And there's this part with Phasma where he fights her, and she says something right before she's about to die, or she says I always knew you were scum, and he goes, yeah, rebel scum, and then she falls over. And I like the fact that there's even at the beginning of this movie, he's mostly out to he is about to flee specifically because he wants to help save Rey. He thinks that this place is doomed, and that the rebellion is doomed, and he has this tracking thing that Rey is supposed to use to find her way back, and he was hoping that he could get as far away as possible, and she'll just come after him on accident, and then they'll be safe. Because he's worried that if she comes back to the Resistance, then she's going to die too. So he starts off still very much in survival mode. And I like the fact that, especially, while his wanting to sacrifice himself is stupid, it still shows this commitment to not running away again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, his thing is moving away from this fear and running away, and learning that, if he comes up with sits down, thinks about something for a little bit, and he comes up with a plan while he was, afraid, he should throw away that plan and come up with a new, better plan.
Yeah.
Because that plan doesn't work.
Yeah, kind of.
That should be the lesson.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, because he's also, oh, we gotta help Skywalker. And Poe's no, we don't. Oh my gosh, I know exactly what we need to do. There is the case that, though where they're wait, if Skywalker got in here, then there must be a way out. Well, no, that could have screwed them over, because it turns out that Luke just showed up. Luke literally did show up. He didn't, get in a different way at all. So it ends with kind of a cool shot of Leia actually having to lift rocks. but basically being like it's everybody seeing her and not because they realize that she's there. And Finn and her finally get to reunite, and it's very sweet. Then again, there are some things that are being set up. What?
You said Leia gets to raise rocks.
Oh, sorry, it is Rey. Sorry. So the ending of the movie is everybody. Rose is hurt, and Finn is by her side, setting up some stuff there, and Rey sees those two together. I'm very nervous about how they're going to play this off, because I do not want there to be a love triangle by any means. But even when they were when Finn and Rey were hugging, it felt like two people who care about each other, but not necessarily romantically, which I'm okay with. But they care about each other so much, and we've been waiting since the end of the last movie for them to reunite, and it's incredibly moving. And then she also gets to reunite with BB-8, which is adorable. And she's like, "Oh, the antenna looks good on you," and he's like, "Yeah, it does."
And she meets Poe.
Okay, I have a problem with this. If you recall, and maybe she was in the same place as him for a while at the end of the last movie. He definitely waves goodbye.
A few minutes. Maybe.
A while. I think it was a while. It was at least a day because she had to get provisions and stuff. But I don't think... Apparently they had never met. Apparently they didn't meet at the end of The Force Awakens. So, and then he's like, "Hi, I'm Poe." And she's like, "Hi, I'm Rey." And I'm kind of nervous that they're pairing up those two, which in fandom I don't mind. Like if it's like fan fiction where you can play around with these pairings. I mean, hell, I've gotten to the point, especially with this movie, that does a pretty good job of complicating their dynamic. I don't even mind right now, like the idea of fandom writing and making stuff for Kylo and Rey. I think that the movie did a pretty good job of setting up interesting dynamics without actually having it go there, right? Like, without making me pissed off canonically. So I don't even mind, like, I'm at the point where as long as they don't bother me, I don't mind the shippers who are shipping Rey and Kylo Ren. Like, fine. Okay. Because I think the movies have set up enough so that I don't know. I think that they did a pretty good job of having her agency be very strong throughout this whole movie, and especially with that relationship. But I'm very worried still that the movie itself is going to set up Poe and Rey as potential love something, just because of the way that was set up. Now, it could just be that they want to make sure that everybody knows each other, everybody awake knows each other, so that in the next movie, when they're all allies, that there's already a somewhat relationship that they can build off of, you know? Mm-hmm. So, like, they clearly have, like, a cute dynamic, at least, like, some, like, dynamic going.
Hey, they've met.
So...
That's a start.
We will see where that goes, but I think it was very smart, in hindsight, it was very smart for them to end with Leia and Rey sitting and talking about the fact that Luke passed, but they both felt it, and it didn't feel sad. It felt joyful. It felt like, it felt at peace. Like, he clearly died in peace. What were you gonna say?
This was another thing that coming to like, oh, these are a rebellion so that they can be a big force for the future. They've really given Leia's, or not Leia's, but Carrie Fisher's daughter a much bigger role in this movie than they did previously.
Oh, yeah. Which I don't mind.
No, I
don't mind
she
at
did
all.
Well.
Yeah, she did good. I don't know if she got, like, she was mostly, like, a supporting character, but I really liked what they did with her, as someone who was kind of helping out Poe for a while. So maybe it does end...
Maybe eventually she'll be our new Mom Mothra.
Maybe. So it ends with the kids. We see these kids that were working for the stables in the casino. And to be fair, they don't spend a lot of time with the kids. And there is a cute thing because there's this thing that Rey says about legends and how, like, him being a legend isn't necessarily a bad thing because it could mean bringing hope It can mean inspiring people. And you see these kids, and they're playing, and one of the kids is, like, telling the story of Luke. They both, also, I kind of appreciate the fact that none of them spoke English. So it feels like, I don't know, it feels like a little more depth. Like, this is these people that are native to this planet do not speak English. But they're clearly talking about Luke's showdown against the First Order. And then the kids are basically yelled at to get back to work, and one of the kids, we find out is force sensitive because he kind of pulls the broom towards him, and you realize that Rose, who had shown them her resistance ring earlier, had clearly given it to them for helping them escape. And so he sees one of the Star Destroyers, like, shoot off, or, like, not Star Destroyers, but, like, a ship shoot off into the sky. He looks at the resistance ring, and he kind of holds the broom like a lightsaber. And the idea is that there is hope for people that there are people out there that are rooting for the resistance. Like, they're a small group, but there are people out there that are willing to fight. It does feel very Disney that these are very small children. And that, very like, look, children, just like you.
Yeah, it's the most Disney-esque thing in the whole movie. It's cheesy and dumb as hell, but whatever. It's
not, it could have been worse. They didn't have the kids speak English. This wasn't a baby Anakin Skywalker saying bad lines thing.
You know what it actually reminded me of? Their little trio reminded me of the kids that were Anakin's friends in...
A little bit.
In, what is it, Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh no, don't stick with them too long, please.
No, and I think they did fine.
They did fine.
It also ties into Rose's story about her and her sister. Her sister, by the way, died very quickly, but at least got to have, like, a very heroic death. But it ties into her story, like, directly, talking about how when they were kids, basically, they were, I don't know if they said enslaved, they basically said enslaved from, like, a very early age, and that's why she joined the Resistance.
Oh, and also, one of the things I really like about this movie is how they frame the Resistance, like, in that...
It was very tiny, like...
Tiny and out of resources, and this is the first time you really get that feeling that they are, like...
They're holding on by, like, a thread. Dollar. Yeah. They're really, like, that's the thing. The Republic getting destroyed is such a major factor in this movie. Like, they basically say, the First Order's doing great. Like, even though the Star Destroyer is dead, like, they're doing really good because there was a power vacuum and they just jumped right in. So, despite the fact that the Star Destroyer, or the Star whatever, Blaster, whatever it was called, so it was, sorry, I was trying to look for a specific character because I wanted to talk about it before we close off. Point being that there is this really specific aspect. By the way, Gary the dog got to play a character in this movie, and I need to actually keep an eye out for him.
Later.
But yeah, he plays Space Gary. Uncredited, though.
Yeah.
What I will, I did kind of hear about that he got his own role. Oh man, I have no idea who that character is. Joseph Gordon-Levitt played Slow and Low, a character I don't recognize.
Probably someone at the casino.
Yeah, but I don't know who it would be.
Warwick Davis was in the movie again.
Warwick Davis. I'm guessing it's the little guy who kept putting the coins in. It
could have been his voice.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But no. So I will say one thing about this, which I was kind of bummed out about, is that there's a character in Force Awakens who she was the female X-Wing pilot, and she got like a few lines, and she was really, really good. And it's a real bummer that she dies kind of in the middle of the movie, and like because they basically wanted to show that most of Poe's like X-Wing force is gone. But she dies in the middle of the movie, and I was really hoping that she'd have more scenes. And that was one of the scenes, like that, And that was really one of the characters that I said earlier I was really bummed out didn't. And of course, I can't find her in the cast now. But I was really bummed out that she kind of got killed off pretty quickly. I wanted to see more from her. Yeah, I don't even see her listed, but I know she was definitely in the film. I can't think of anything else to say right now. I'm sure once things...
We're also pretty much out of battery.
We are out of battery, I think, more or less. So I'll just say this. I will probably have more complex thoughts about this movie before or once we see it again. We're hoping to see it on Sunday again. I think that they're really off to a great start. It's very relevant for 2017, and I liked where they went with it, even if it wasn't the movie I would have made, which is always kind of a good thing. So, you have anything else to say? Hey everyone, real quick, I know we usually don't do this, but I just thought of something else I really wanted to say about this movie. Could you slow down, hun, and not go directly into the thing while I talk about it? Yeah, we're getting food, so I wanted to say this really quick. So, Rey's parents are just random-ass, horrible people who apparently sold her into slavery. That's all they did. And the best thing... So, yes, that actually sucks, and it's awful. But the best thing about this is that... I don't want... just park really quick. He wanted to go through Mike wanted to go through the drive-thru. And I'm like, no, I don't want someone's, voice to ask you what you want to order while I'm talking about this very specific thing. Anyway, really quickly, I'm sorry. So Rey's parentage is just that they're, crappy scrappers who, sold her away, and it traumatized her, and she forgot about all this, so she thought they were coming back, because she was a tiny little child. And so, she's no one. Kylo says, literally, you don't fit into this story. You don't fit into the story with the rebels, or with Luke Skywalker. You don't belong here. Why don't you come with me? We can belong together, we can, work together. We can be the outsiders who make something new. And she ultimately rejects it, but the reason why it's so tempting is because she's coming to terms with the fact that she's no one. But this is where it's smart, because one, it sets up the idea that the Skywalker lineage isn't, Skywalker lineage is not... It's not a thing. It doesn't have to be a thing. Being a Skywalker does not mean that you are automatically the hero of the story. You're not the protagonist. And I love also the fact that it means that she gets to choose her destiny. It's not a thing about fate or she gets to choose her destiny. And it's the smartest thing they could have done. And it shows that they're going beyond the scope of the original trilogy, and especially of the prequels, which really pushed hard on this idea of destiny, and the chosen one thing, and obviously of the Skywalkers being amazing. So I loved that part, and I'm really excited to see how much agency they give to Rey in the next movie. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this in here. We'll just do sign-offs again. Okay, sorry everybody. We'll just cut away when we're turning down. Okay, whatever. And we'll just sign off again. So sign off. He's editing. I don't care. Katie and Mike. Hi everybody. JustPlaySomething.com. We'll see you later. Bye everybody.